Welcome to AI Paper Podcasts. Today we're diving straight into Soft Adaptive Policy Optimization, or SAPO, a new approach from the Quen team at Alibaba. And this one is all about stability in the very high-stakes world of reinforcement learning for these massive language models. So here's the problem they're tackling. Policy optimization in LLMs, especially these huge mixture of experts models, is just notoriously unstable. It's always on the brink of collapse. And that's because of the really high variance of what's called token-level importance ratios. Existing methods, things you might have heard of like GRPO and GSPO, they use this kind of brittle, hard clipping. Basically, you either accept a noisy update or you just throw the signal away.
Right, and SAPO's breakthrough is really twofold. First, they completely replaced that all-or-nothing hard clipping. They use a smooth, temperature-controlled soft gate, creates this continuous trust region that smoothly tones down the noise but keeps the valuable, moderate signals.
And here's the real hidden gem, the part I found fascinating. They realized the instability mostly comes from the negative updates in that massive vocabulary space. So they introduced an asymmetric temperature. They made the constraint tighter for those negative updates.
Exactly. And the results, they really speak for themselves. This combination gave them way better stability. The training could run for much longer, and it delivered higher final performance. We saw this across the whole Quen 3VL model family on really complex reasoning tasks. So SAPO is kind of a blueprint for doing stable, scalable RL fine-tuning.
Okay, let's unpack all of that. So why is RL suddenly so essential but also so unstable for these huge models? We know that once you pre-train a foundation model, you need reinforcement learning to really crank up its high-level reasoning, right? For things like deep math problems, complex coding, multimodal stuff. This is where teams like Quen and DeepSeek are putting a ton of effort.
Exactly. And the standard practice is what we call group-based RL. You take a query, you generate a handful of responses, a group, and then you assign rewards to those full sequences. You normalize the rewards in the group, and then you update the policy using these weights from the importance ratio, the 4IT.
Which is the ratio of the new policy's probability to the old one for any given token.
That's the one.
The theory sounds fine, but in practice, that importance ratio is the chaos generator. Why is the variance so incredibly high, especially with these MOE models?
Well, the scale is one thing, but MOE models, they add this other layer of complication, routing heterogeneity. Different experts get activated for different tokens, and this really complex dynamic routing just injects even more, nonlinearity and variance into those token ratios.
Okay.
So you combine that with the very long responses these models generate, and you just up the odds that one single off-policy token will create this astronomically high ratio that if you don't control it, it just instantly crashes your entire training run.
Which brings us to the old guard then, the hard clipping methods. What makes things like GRPO and GSPO so brittle in this?
Right, in this high variance environment. Well, the difficulty is that hard clipping is just a blunt instrument. If you look at GRPO, which clips at the token level, it draws a fixed hard fence, let's say at 1 plus or minus epsilon. If a ratio falls outside that little band, the update is just zeroed out, gone.
And if you set that epsilon too tight, you're throwing out good samples. Too loose, and you're letting in all the noise.
You've got it. It's a trade-off dilemma. Stability versus learning signal. You really can't get both with a hard fence.
So you're always losing something.
Precisely. And GSPO, it tries to help by clipping at the sequence level. It normalizes the reward across the whole sequence length, which does cut down some variance, but the fundamental problem is still there. It's still a discontinuous all-or-nothing cutoff. You're either fully in or you're completely out. It's just brittle.
So SAPO's core insight was, let's replace this rigid fence with an adaptive smooth slope. Let's get into how this soft adaptive policy optimization, this continuous trust region, actually works.
Yeah, the whole shift is from that piecewise, hard clip function to a bounded sigmoid-shaped function of the importance ratio. You're moving from a step to a smooth curve.
So if you're trying to picture this, in the hard clipping world, the gradient weight is like a flat plateau, and then snap, it just falls off a cliff. The gradient vanishes instantly.
With SAPO, it's different. When you're near the on-policy point, where that ratio is close to 1, the function just preserves the gradients. It acts just like the unclipped objective.
So you don't lose any signal where you need it the most.
Exactly.
But the real magic happens as the policy starts to deviate, as it moves away from 1.
Yes, that's it. As the ratio starts to climb, which means you're getting significantly off policy, the gradient weight begins to smoothly decay. It doesn't just drop to 0. And this smooth attenuation does two things at once. It drastically reduces the catastrophic damage from an outlier token, so you get stability, but it still maintains a learning signal for those moderate deviations. We're not just throwing data away.
So it addresses that efficiency problem right away. Instead of losing the entire signal from a sequence because of one bad token, you're just smoothly downweighting that one outlier. The rest of the sequence can still contribute.
That is the essence of it. The math behind it is that the weight function comes from the sigmoid. Its derivative, the gradient weight itself, peaks right at 1 and then smoothly goes to 0 as the ratio diverges. It prevents that brittle gradient vanishing, but still curbs the really big, ambitious updates. It just makes the whole optimization process far more predictable and stable.
So they solved the smoothness problem, but that wasn't the whole story, was it?
This gets us to the really critical realization they had about LLM policy updates, the need for asymmetry. Why did they have to constrain positive and negative updates differently? This is, I think, maybe the most insightful part of the paper. It directly tackles the unique architecture of these huge language models. The instability is disproportionately driven by negative updates. So tokens and sequences that got a low reward, the ones we want to discourage.
Okay, let's break that down. Why is a negative update inherently messier than a positive one in a massive vocabulary?
So think about the action space. Your vocabulary is like a massive classroom, maybe 100,000 words. When you get a positive advantage, the model learns, okay, that was a good token. I'll increase the logit for this one sample token, and it might slightly decrease the logits for a few competitors. It's a very focused, concentrated change.
Right, focused on the one successful token.
Precisely. Now think about a negative advantage. We want to decrease the probability, the logit, of the sampled bad token. But where does that probability mass go? It has to diffuse across the entire rest of the vocabulary. The update ends up increasing the logits of many, many other unsampled tokens.
So a single negative update is subtly pushing mass towards hundreds, maybe thousands of totally irrelevant tokens in this huge action space.
Yes. It's like trying to punish one student, but you accidentally give 100 random students a tiny positive nudge they didn't earn. That accumulation of diffused off-policy noise from negative updates is the prime source of instability. It's structural.
Okay, so SAPA's solution to the structural problem is that asymmetric temperature control, setting higher than TAUPO.
Yes. They set a tighter constraint, a higher temperature parameter, just for the negative advantage tokens. Empirically, they used like 1.05 for negative versus 1.0 for positive. This basically forces the smooth gate to decay more rapidly, but only for those negative gradients. You're aggressively dampening the high variance, diffuse negative updates while letting the focused positive updates learn a bit faster. That differential treatment is what stopped the early training collapse.
That really does sound like they found and mastered this hidden complexity. So now let's connect it all back. How does this dual approach, smoothness plus asymmetry let SAPO, get the best of both worlds from the older baselines? The claim is it's both sequence-coherent and token adaptive.
Let's start with sequence coherence, which is what GSPO was trying to achieve. Under normal conditions, small policy steps and low variation of token ratios in a sequence, SAPO's individual token gates actually concentrate together. Mathematically, it reduces to a smooth sequence-level gate, so it structurally starts to mimic GSPO.
And the paper actually showed that these assumptions hold most of the time in real LLM training.
They do. They have data for both the QuinnMoE and dense models, and it confirms the token ratios are tightly clustered near 1, and the variance is consistently very low. So in the easy, stable phases, SAPO gets the benefits of GSPO. That coherence across the whole response.
But the moment those assumptions are violated, that's when SAPO really shines.
Exactly. If you get one or two tokens that are way off policy outliers, GSPO is forced to throw away the entire sequence gradient because of its hard sequence-level clip. SAPO, on the other hand, it just defaults back to its token-level soft gate. It selectively downweights only the specific outlier tokens, and it preserves the signal from the rest of the sequence. It's just dramatically more sample efficient.
And what about compared to GRPO, the token level one? That was also adaptive, but unstable.
Well, GRPO's adaptivity with binary, it was either 1 or 0. SAPO's is continuous, controlled by that smooth function. When the deviation is small, SAPO lets the gradient stay responsive, allowing for bigger, more confident steps than GRPO would. But as deviation grows, it smoothly shrinks the step size. It provides a more conservative, stable dynamic. It's aggressive when it's safe and conservative when it needs to be.
The theory is really solid. Let's talk performance. They tested this on a cold start Quen330B MOE model on these really tricky math benchmarks. What did that stability comparison actually look like?
Oh, the contrast was stark. I mean, it was night and day. In their trials, the baselines GSPO and GRPO, even with tricks like routing replay, they all showed early training collapse. They just diverge really quickly, sometimes after only 10,000 steps, because that noise eventually hits the hard clip threshold and just destabilizes the whole model. SAPO, with its soft, adaptive, and asymmetric control, it just kept on learning consistently for much longer, and it reached a significantly higher final pass at 1 accuracy.
And the ablation studies, did they confirm the hypothesis about the negative updates was the key?
Absolutely. When they tried different temperature setups, the highest stability was always achieved when they cranked up the constraint on the negative tokens. So tau j greater than tau pass. And conversely, when they flipped it, gave negative tokens less regulation, it consistently led to the most dramatic training collapse. So it's not just a theory. They proved it empirically. Managing those negative gradients is the key.
And all this research translated into a big engineering win for them, right? They applied SAPO to the whole Quen3VL family.
Yes, across both their MOE and their dense models. And SAPO gave them consistent performance gains across a really demanding mix of tasks, text, and multimodal apps, covering math, coding, logical reasoning, even complex image interpretation with map vision. On the exact same compute budget, SAPO just outperformed both of the hard clipping baselines.
And beyond the raw performance, was there a big engineering benefit for people who might want to use this?
Definitely. Like I mentioned, the baselines often needed these extra stabilizing parts like routing replay just to survive training. SAPO got these really strong, stable results without needing those complex add-ons. And that simplification, it reduces engineering overhead, it streamlines the whole pipeline, and just makes RL fine-tuning far more reliable and repeatable in a production environment.
So we've covered the entire journey here, from the brittle hard clipping to a continuous soft gate, and then mastering that crucial asymmetry. You need to control the chaos from negative updates in these huge vocabularies.
The big takeaway for you, whether you're a researcher or an engineer, is that the future of scalable RL for these massive models, it demands mechanisms that are both sequence-coherent but also selectively token-adaptive. SAPO gives a really clear, reliable recipe for that. It sustains learning longer, and it hits higher performance ceilings. It really highlights that smooth differential regularization is how you unlock the full potential of RL.
And this raises a fascinating question that goes beyond just text. The research clearly pinned down negative token gradients as the main source of instability. So with the rise of multimodal systems where the action space isn't just words, but complex outputs like images or video, how might we design new mechanisms to selectively regulate negative policy updates in those non-textual spaces to make sure we can explore without risking policy collapse? That structural problem is probably only going to get harder.